Climate science presents a very clear demand. The planet must reduce greenhouse gas emissions on a scale that has no historical precedent, and the time frame for doing so is extremely limited. Every year of delay brings the world closer to severe climate disruption. Energy policy, therefore, requires a careful review of every option capable of delivering electricity with very low emissions while maintaining stability and affordability. Nuclear power stands out as one of the lowest carbon sources of electricity available. It can provide a steady output without the interruptions caused by changing weather. Yet many countries with strong commitments to reducing emissions have slowed or cancelled their nuclear programs. Instead of expansion, long delays, financial problems, and public resistance have left nuclear power at a standstill across much of the industrialized world. This paradox deserves a closer look. Policies designed to ensure safety have erected so many obstacles to nuclear construction that the technology has become both difficult to develop and hard to sustain. Consequently, nuclear power is often perceived not as a viable solution, but as a threat. Instead of being recognized as a means to counter the far greater danger posed by carbon emissions, people just think of the danger of nuclear power. And this prompts a straightforward question. Has the effort to regulate every aspect of nuclear energy become a self-defeating strategy, ultimately hindering the decarbonization that the world so desperately needs? Well, the analysis that follows explores nuclear power through several lenses. It examines the technology's technical advantages alongside its stalled development, the pervasive influence of regulation, the significant impact of costs, the emerging responsibilities opened by new technologies, the valuable lessons from countries with successful nuclear programs, and the role of cultural fear. So let's get into it.
Vessi are the sponsor of today's episode. You've heard me talk about them before. I talk about them a lot because they pay me to talk about them a lot. But even though they didn't, I wouldn't be bringing them up as often as I do. But I'd probably still be banging on about the shoes that I like so much. Vessis are made with a material called Dynatex, which makes them 100% waterproof, not water resistant. These are their weekend pair, by the way. This was actually the first pair that Vessi ever sent me, and I wore them constantly. I still wear Vessis constantly, but the sponsorship was going well, so they sent me a bunch more pairs, which is very nice of them. Now I have like a Vessi collection. I've got multiple different kinds and different colors, and I just rotate. It's fantastic. I could have new shoes every day of the month. Maybe not month. I've probably got like a good couple of weeks worth, which is cool. So they're lightweight, they're comfortable. When you first get them, they might feel a little tight, and then that's because they kind of form to your feet. I have particularly wide feet. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned that before, but Vessis just work for me. They kind of widen out to your size. And not in that weird way, sometimes you'll get a shoe and it like sags over the top because your feet are so wide. Not with Vessi. Look at that. Perfect. And these are just great shoes. I don't know what else to say about them other than you should get them. They're Vessis. These are the weekend pair. They got a whole bunch of other stuff as well. All you need to do to get 15% off, plus they got a 1-year warranty and a 30-day return policy. All you need to do is go to vessi.com/megaprojects and get 15% off. It's a great deal. They're great shoes. You can't go wrong. And now back to today's episode.
The potential of nuclear power to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is well established by data collected over the entire life cycle of various energy sources. Studies that encompass construction, fuel processing, operation, and decommissioning consistently find that nuclear energy produces emissions among the lowest compared to other large-scale power generation technologies. Only wind and solar exhibit similar results, whereas coal, oil, and natural gas emit many times more carbon dioxide per unit of electricity. Nuclear energy also possesses an additional advantage that is rarely addressed with enough clarity. A reactor operates every hour of the year, providing a steady output that does not rely on weather conditions. In contrast, wind turbines and solar panels cannot maintain that constant supply without energy storage systems for periods when the sun is down or the air is just pretty still. Those storage systems remain expensive and limited in scale. This constant production capacity allows a power grid to depend on nuclear energy as a continuous foundation of supply, with renewable energy sources augmenting that structure when available. Another important characteristic of nuclear power is its land use. A single nuclear plant occupies far less space than the extensive areas required to produce an equivalent amount of electricity from solar panels or wind farms. This factor has grown in importance as nations strive to balance energy production with the demands of agriculture infrastructure and conservation. Despite these clear advantages, global progress in building nuclear power plants remains slow. France serves as the most visible counterexample. Its national program constructed a network of reactors that supplies most of the country's electricity while maintaining very low carbon emissions. That success demonstrates what nuclear power can achieve when supported by long-term policy and consistent management. By contrast, other countries have not replicated this result. Instead, nuclear deployment has decelerated, widening the gap between technical capability and actual deployment. The scientific and engineering knowledge needed to expand nuclear energy is already available. The real challenge lies in translating that capacity into action, a gap that stands as one of the largest barriers to an energy transition that's capable of meeting climate goals. Now, the global history of nuclear regulation underwent a dramatic transformation following a series of high-profile accidents that significantly raised public awareness. The 3 Mile Island accident in 1979, the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, and the Fukushima event in 2011, they each triggered waves of legal and technical requirements. These new rules reshaped the approval, construction, and monitoring processes for nuclear facilities. Although intended to protect the public, these regulations have also slowed the deployment of nuclear power, posing challenges for the ongoing energy transition. In many countries, obtaining approval for a new nuclear power plant now entails years of review before construction can even begin. Even after a plant is approved, schedules often extend well beyond the initial estimate, as every modification must undergo additional layers of review. These delays do not enhance safety once a design has been verified. Instead, they drive up overall project costs and contribute to a cycle in which fewer companies are willing to invest in new nuclear capacity. A major influence on regulation comes from the linear no-threshold model of radiation exposure. This model assumes that there is no safe amount of radiation, and that even very small exposures can create health risks. While it has been influential for decades, many scientists argue that the model lacks evidence at very low doses. They suggest that other biological mechanisms reduce the impact of minor exposures. Supporters, however, maintain that the precautionary approach remains necessary, whereas critics contend that it has encouraged fear rather than a reasonable assessment of the risks. The structure of regulation varies between countries, and these differences they have clear consequences. In the United States and the United Kingdom, lengthy review processes and frequent rule changes have led to projects that take more than a decade to complete. Each year of delay adds financing costs and sometimes requires design adjustments because the technology becomes outdated before construction is even finished. In contrast, South Korea has built multiple plants within shorter timeframes by employing standardized designs and maintaining a predictable regulatory path. Their strong safety record demonstrates that with careful planning, it is possible to produce safe reactors without extreme delays. Excessive regulation also has another unintended result. By slowing the construction of new reactors, it forces older designs to remain operational for longer. These older plants are often less efficient and rely on safety systems that are decades old. Rather than enabling the development of new designs that feature passive safety systems and new fuel types, the regulatory process hinders the introduction of innovation onto the grid. In some cases, companies have abandoned advanced designs because the cost and time required to satisfy regulatory procedures outweighed any benefits of building a safer plant. The effect extends beyond the technology itself. In response to uncertainty, utilities and investors often avoid nuclear projects, even in countries where the demand for low-carbon energy is clear. Lengthy regulatory schedules make project financing increasingly expensive. In the absence of strong public support, many projects are cancelled before construction even begins. The result is a cycle in which a strong focus on protection paradoxically delays the very systems capable of providing safer energy. And the problem doesn't lie in the existence of regulation. Safety oversight is, of course, necessary for a technology that uses radioactive material. The real concern is finding the right balance between precaution and practicality. When fear drives rules that extend project timelines to 15 or 20 years, the result is an energy grid that remains dependent on fossil fuels while safer and cleaner nuclear plants wait for approval. The limitations of current nuclear programs have increased interest in a new generation of technologies that aim to solve many of the challenges faced by the large reactors of the past. These designs approach construction fuel management, safety, and cost from a different perspective. The most widely discussed among them are small modular reactors. These are advanced reactors that use new materials and coolants and experimental concepts such as nuclear fusion. Small modular reactors, known as SMRs, are being developed with an emphasis on the factory production of standardized units. These reactors are smaller than conventional reactors, which allows them to be assembled in controlled industrial environments and then transported to a site for installation. By carrying out most of the construction in a factory rather than on-site, SMRs aim to reduce delays, lower costs, and avoid many of the challenges that have affected large projects. Their smaller size also makes it easier to build several units in stages instead of constructing one very large plant, a strategy that can help companies better manage risk. Advanced reactor designs exploring new coolants such as molten salt, liquid metal, and high-temperature gas. Many of these designs operate at lower pressures and higher temperatures than current reactors, features that not only improve efficiency but also add passive safety measures. Passive safety means that the reactor can shut down and cool itself without the need for human intervention or external power, thereby eliminating many of the risks associated with earlier reactor designs. Additionally, some of these designs incorporate fuel cycles that produce less long-lived waste. Microreactors represent an even smaller category, designed to provide energy in locations far from large power grids. These can power military bases, data centers, or isolated communities. These systems are compact enough to be delivered, fully assembled, sometimes inside a container that can be moved by truck or rail. A recent example is the Kaleidos microreactor designed by Radiant Industries, which has been proposed for manufacture in Wyoming. These microreactors use helium gas for cooling, eliminating the need for water, and incorporate triso-fuel particles that are resistant to very high temperatures. The company describes these reactors as portable and easy to remove from a site when they're no longer needed. This example highlights one pathway that engineers are exploring to make nuclear technology more flexible and less dependent on complex infrastructure. Another area of research focuses on nuclear fusion. Now, fusion aims to replicate the process powering the sun by combining light atoms at extremely high temperatures to release energy. Unlike fission, which splits heavy atoms, fusion does not produce long-lived radioactive waste and cannot initiate a self-sustaining chain reaction. Although many laboratories are working to achieve a controlled continuous fusion reaction, the technology remains experimental, making it unlikely to contribute significantly to the energy supply for several decades. The promise of these technologies relies on more than just engineering. Regulations, financing systems, and public attitudes have to adapt to accommodate different reactor sizes and new approaches. Without changes in these areas, even the best designs may have difficulty moving beyond research facilities into commercial service. Meanwhile, countries such as China and India are already advancing with pilot projects and test facilities, while many Western nations continue to linger in the planning stages. These new reactors clearly demonstrate that nuclear technology can evolve by learning from past experiences. However, they also prompt an important question. Will governments and regulators permit these designs to be deployed quickly enough to make a significant impact on decarbonizing electricity? International comparisons reveal that the success of nuclear energy programs hinges on consistent policies, clear planning, and public support. Countries that have maintained nuclear energy as a major component of their power supply share several common factors. They implement stable strategies, preserve the industrial capacity needed for construction, and cultivate public confidence through long-term communication rather than temporary announcements. France serves as the most well-known example of a country that executed a national strategy to develop a vast network of nuclear reactors. In the latter half of the 20th century, the French government led a program centered on standard designs and predictable schedules. The outcome is a grid that not only produces very low emissions, but also delivers stable power over many decades. Although some maintenance and modernization are now necessary, the program's contribution to reducing carbon emissions is unmistakable. South Korea has followed a similar path by emphasizing efficiency and planning. Standardized designs combined with a streamlined approach process have enabled the country to build reactors faster and at a lower cost compared to those built under less predictable approaches. These reactors provide a significant share of the national grid, and South Korea has also exported its reactor technology to other countries. Other nations have taken different directions. Germany decided to close its reactors while still importing electricity produced from coal and natural gas in neighboring countries. This policy has increased carbon emissions and intensified reliance on fossil fuels to stabilize the grid. In countries such as China, the government has continued to expand nuclear power while simultaneously developing renewable capacity. Large-scale construction programs, along with investments in new reactor designs, have allowed China to rapidly grow its nuclear fleet. Public opinion remains a powerful factor in shaping the strategies in each case. Where governments have communicated clearly and consistently, nuclear programs have gained the support needed to operate for decades without interruption. Conversely, where opposition has been strong and constant, projects have been cancelled, even when they might provide safe and reliable energy. Now, nuclear accidents have been rare, yet the public reaction to them has been intense. As a result, nuclear energy carries a reputation for danger that far exceeds its actual record of harm. To understand why this perception exists, consider other sources of electricity that have caused far greater harm without generating the same level of public fear. For example, coal power contributes to air pollution that leads to thousands of deaths every year. Gas infrastructure has experienced explosions that damage entire neighborhoods. Hydroelectric dams have failed, releasing floods that kill large numbers of people in a single event. Although these tragedies are far more common than nuclear accidents, they don't exert the same influence over public policy. When nuclear accidents occur, the impact is immediately visible. News coverage emphasizes the dramatic aspect of these events, showing images of reactors, evacuation, and contamination. The accidents at Chernobyl and Fukushima continue to dominate the public imagination decades later. Studies of risk perception refer to this phenomenon as dread risk, a pattern in which people react strongly to rare, frightening events while showing less concern for constant hazards that steadily cause damage year after year. And this leads to a distorted comparison. While coal pollution shortens lives across wide areas, it does so gradually without a single dramatic moment. In contrast, nuclear accidents are immediate and easy to display, so public opinion is shaped more by fear than by careful reading of actual statistics. Activism and media attention have amplified these fears, often framing nuclear power as uniquely dangerous. Policymakers responding to this pressure act with extreme caution, resulting in regulations that make nuclear construction slower and more expensive. A rational approach to risk considers the full range of harms created by each type of energy, including long-term health effects and the impact of climate change itself. By comparing risks honestly, it becomes clear that while nuclear accidents are serious, they have been much less harmful than the ongoing long-term damage caused by fossil fuels. Nuclear energy provides very low carbon electricity, but has been held back by fear, costs, and sluggish approval processes. Moving forward will require governments and industry alike to change the way projects are planned, reviewed, and explained to the public. Safety oversight will be necessary. However, safety rules must be enforced in a manner that avoids indeterminable delays. Clear schedules, constant standards, and early review of designs can enable the construction of new reactors without decades-long waiting periods. A system that takes years to move projects from one stage to another only increases costs without producing better outcomes. Communication with the public also needs to be handled better. Information about nuclear energy is often presented in isolation, while the risks of coal, oil, and gas receive just far less attention. When every energy source is compared fairly, nuclear power shows a much lower record of harm. People who understand this comparison, they're better prepared to decide what kind of energy they want for the future. Next-generation technologies such as modular reactors, advanced fuels, and new safety features cannot make a difference unless regulators and investors are ready to support them. Some countries are already proving that these approaches can work. Other countries, they're losing valuable time. A balanced policy would allow nuclear power to contribute alongside renewables and low-carbon sources. Electricity systems that require stability and low emissions will benefit from this combined approach. Without it, reliance on fossil fuels will remain strong, making the goals of reducing emissions harder to reach. The choice is clear. Nuclear energy can still play a meaningful part in slowing climate change, but if the current approach continues unchanged, its potential will remain locked away, perhaps until it's too late to matter. Thank you for watching.